It was a cold Tuesday morning when Grace noticed him. She had just started her shift at the tiny roadside diner on the edge of town, a cold place forgotten by most and frequented by few. The kind of diner that smelled of burnt toast, cheap coffee, and memories. Grace had worked there for 3 years. The hours were long, the pay was barely enough, and the tips were unpredictable. But she never complained. She needed the job. Not just for herself, but for her younger brother Sam, who needed special care after their parents passed away. Grace wiped down the counter, humming softly to herself, when the bell above the door jingled. A man stepped in, older, maybe in his 70s, wearing a simple coat and a faded cap. He moved slowly, his eyes scanning the nearly empty diner before settling into a booth in the corner. There was something about him. Not the kind of something that screamed importance or wealth. Quite the opposite. He looked tired, worn, and lonely. Grace walked over with a smile. "Morning, sir. Can I get you started with some coffee?" He nodded silently, as she poured the steaming coffee into the chipped mug. He finally spoke. "You don't see many smiling faces in places like this anymore." Grace chuckled softly. Smiling's free. Everything else costs too much these days. That made him smile. It was faint, but it was there. Over the next hour, he sat quietly, sipping his coffee, occasionally watching people pass by the fogged-up window. Grace noticed he didn't order anything else. No breakfast. No pie. Just the coffee. When it came time for the check, she placed it gently on the table and walked away. The old man stared at the bill, then reached into his coat pocket. His hand fumbled. He checked the other pocket. Then slowly, his expression changed. Embarrassment. Panic. Helplessness. Grace noticed as she walked back over and bent down beside the table. "It's okay," she whispered. "I've got it covered." He looked up, startled. It's just coffee. Consider it on the house." Tears welled up in the corners of his eyes. "Thank you." "It's nothing," she smiled. "Really?" But it wasn't nothing to him. He left a few minutes later, slowly stepping out into the cold, vanishing into the gray fog that had rolled in. Grace didn't think much of it. She had done what she always did, helped someone who needed it. What she didn't know was that the man wasn't just any old stranger. His name was William Hartley. And he wasn't poor, nor was he lost. He was a billionaire, the founder of Hartley Enterprises. But lately, all the wealth in the world hadn't been able to fix what he felt inside: loneliness. His wife had passed 3 years ago. His children were grown and distant. And his days, once filled with meetings and global travel, now felt empty. He had started wandering into small towns across the country in secret. Not as a billionaire, but as a man looking for something real. Somewhere in his heart, he still believed in love, in kindness, in humanity. That morning at the diner, Grace had shown him more warmth than anyone had in years. And she had done it without knowing who he was. He couldn't stop thinking about her. The next week, William returned. This time, he ordered coffee and pie. "You again?" Grace grinned as she approached. "Back for the world-famous burnt pie?" "Back for the smile," he said simply. They talked more this time. About the town, the weather, Grace's dreams. She told him about her brother, about working 2 jobs, about her love for baking but never having the means to go to culinary school. Every week, he came back. And every week, Grace looked forward to his visits. She started saving an extra slice of pie just for him. And slowly, their bond grew. But William still hadn't revealed who he was. He wanted to be sure. One night, after closing, Grace found herself standing outside, lost in thought. William was there, waiting with a warm coat in hand. "You look cold," he said. "Just life," she replied. "It's colder than any winter." He smiled. "Let me give you a ride." She hesitated. "I don't usually go with strangers." "I won't be a stranger for long," she trusted him. Not because of what he had, but because of how he made her feel seen, safe, and somehow valued. He drove her to a quiet hill outside town. The stars were out, and the lights below twinkled like magic. "This is my favorite view," he said. "Every time I feel lost, I come here." Grace sat in silence, letting the moment sink in. He turned to her. "Grace, I haven't been honest with you." She looked at him, confused. "My name isn't just William, I'm William Hartley." She blinked. "The William Hartley?" He nodded. "I didn't want you to know." "Not yet. I needed to be sure you were real. That your kindness wasn't because of what I could give, but because of who you are." Grace's heart pounded. She didn't know what to say. He continued, "I've met people all over the world. But you gave me hope again. You reminded me what it means to care, to love, not with expectations, but with heart." She sat still, tears in her eyes. "I'm not looking for someone to share my wealth," he said. "I'm looking for someone to share my life." Silence. Then Grace whispered, "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it. Say you'll let me into your life the way you let me into that diner." She smiled through the tears. "I already did." Months passed. Grace no longer worked at the diner. With William's support, she started her own small bakery named Sam's Morning Sun after her brother. The bakery became a local favorite. Sam thrived in a better school, surrounded by friends and care. And Grace? She blossomed, but she didn't marry William right away. She told him she needed time to grow, to be sure she wasn't losing herself. In his world, he respected that. They traveled, laughed, built memories. And when the time was right, Grace said yes, not to the billionaire, but to the man who sat in her diner with trembling hands, too embarrassed to pay for coffee. Their wedding was simple. No media, no glamour. Just love, surrounded by the people who mattered. At the reception, Grace stood beside William, looked at their guests, and said something she'd held in her heart all along. "Kindness costs nothing, but it's worth everything." I didn't know who he was. I only knew he looked like he needed someone to care. And so I did, not knowing that act would change my life forever. The crowd erupted in applause. Sam cheered the loudest. And as the sun set behind them, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, Grace held William's hand tightly. Sometimes, the richest stories don't begin with wealth. They begin with coffee and a heart that chooses kindness, no matter who's sitting across the table.